What's good, everybody? AB Media 83 here. And today we're going to be covering the Lefty versus Vote Blue No Matter Who debate. In other words, or the way I put it, Brianna Joy Gray versus Krystal Ball and her Simp Kyle. So, let's get started.
Just haven't heard back or anything, but I just don't want people to think we're debating Cornel West, but like Krystal and Kyle are refusing to talk to Cornel West. We'd love to talk to Cornel West. We want to have him, we'd love to have him on at any point in time to discuss anything and everything. So we're going to discuss his campaign a little bit here. And so I want to lay out what my position is, and then Bree, I'll turn it over to you, and you can respond to it. And Krystal, you can jump in at some point and say what your position is.
We'll go through all the things.
We'll go through all the things. So here's my, first of all, in the Democratic primary, because I'm a registered Democrat in New York, I will be voting for Marianne Williamson. Very happy and proud to say that. I'm the chief Marianne Williamson bro out there. I'm leading the charge.
No one cares.
Now, in New York, I'm in a safe state. So would I vote for Cornel West in New York? Yes, because I have a 95% agreement with him on policy. And I think it would be nice to get the Green Party in a position where if they become more viable because we get ranked choice voting or something, it'd be nice to grow their popularity a little bit. And when we get ranked choice voting, I think they kind of automatically become a lot more viable. So I'd like to help out in that process. But if I'm in a swing state and it's Biden versus Trump, I'm at the point now where I don't even think it's a tough call. I would definitely vote for Biden because
I wouldn't. I'm not voting for Biden.
Either in that situation, even if other people are running, either the Democrat or the Republican is going to win. And in my estimation, Biden has definitely passed what I would describe as my bare minimum purity test. And I think if it's him or Trump, or even him or DeSantis or anybody, he just blows them out of the water. And so I think I'd happily vote for Biden in that instance. Your response?
So I similarly was voting for Jill Stein in New York in 2016.
I did the same.
Unfortunately, I held my nose and voted for Hillary Clinton, and I still can't get that stench out of my nose. Lord have mercy. Jill Stein went on the ballot in Indiana, so should have voted for Trump.
And I also happen to believe that strategically it makes the most sense to apply pressure to the Democratic Party by voting for not Biden in a primary.
Totally agree.
Marianne Williamson is obviously the most progressive candidate in the primary, and then vote for.
While that might be true, I'm not feeling Marianne Williamson at all.
Cornel West in general. And I know there are a lot of people in my audience who are frustrated by that plan because they think that it takes something away from Cornel West's run, or it affirms the Democratic Party in some way to vote for Marianne Williamson running as a Democrat. I don't feel that way. I feel it's a little hypocritical to have that position, given that we all just enthusiastically voted for Bernie twice in the primary the last two rounds. You can make a distinction saying that Bernie was an independent, and he always identified as an independent, and Marianne Williamson doesn't have that kind of cloak of distance from the Democratic Party. You can say what you want. I don't see those things as mutually exclusive in the least. So that is also my plan. I differ from you only insofar as that I would say it's a more difficult choice in a swing state to decide what you're going to do. But I frankly respect people who feel comfortable. It has not been something that I have to contend with, but I respect people who feel comfortable voting third party even in swing states. The reason is this, and it goes back to that early bad faith viral Noam Chomsky interview in which I asked him about a month before the 2020 race. Look, I said, I take your point. Let's say Trump is an existential threat. Let's say that he's a unique threat among all Republican candidates. My concern is that every year, because we all vote for blue no matter who, because most Democrats vote blue no matter who, or most left-leaning people do, the message that gets sent out is that Democrats don't have a bar. You can go as low as you want, as close to the Democratic Party as Republican Party as you want, and there's a ratchet to the.
Yep, pretty much. That's actually one of my arguments against the Democratic Party. Vote blue no matter who is going to have you in a vicious cycle where all you're going to get is Trump or worse. And I said this back in 2020. If the Democrats don't stop playing around, somebody worse than Trump's going to come and get elected. So Brianna's not wrong here.
For the right effect. And Republicans know that they can keep being more and more extreme. And so I want you to explain to me what you predict to be the stopping point at which we're no longer saying this new Republican is the worst that has ever happened. This new Republican is the worst that has ever happened. Tell me you're not going to be saying the same thing about Ron DeSantis.
Oh, they're going to be saying the same thing in 2028. Trust me, Brianna, they're going to be saying the same shit.
Or Vivek Ramaswamy or whatever other person comes down the pike. And he was unable, in my subjective view, to respond credibly to that claim. So if somebody could tell me strategically what the stopping point is going to be of making this argument of the lesser of two evils, I would be open to the idea that, okay, this is the last one. Donald Trump, fine. He tried to steal the election, fine. That is a new line that he has crossed. But absent an acknowledgement that we are creating our own destiny by lowering the bar in these ways, I'm not comfortable coming out and criticizing anybody who no longer wants to be complicit in that kind of a system that's enabled the Democratic Party to not have a primary, treat Marianne Williamson as badly as they've treated her, treat Bernie Sanders as badly as they treated him, and openly come out and say.
Notice they haven't mentioned RFK, but okay.
They don't have to hold a free, fair election. The DNC argue that in court.
So let me explain a little bit of my position. I think that'll help respond to some of what you said there. And I'm also curious to dig in a little bit more to your analysis of how the Biden actually been in reality. So last election in 2020, I did live in a swing state. I lived in Virginia, still live in Virginia, registered in Virginia. And it did not feel good to vote for Joe Biden, but I just...
Yeah, that's not my problem. I didn't vote for Joe Biden in 2020. Oops.
Decided to vote for Joe Biden, which is something I said publicly at the time. But
Nope, I wasn't going to do that again. I held my nose and voted for Hillary. I wasn't going to do that for Joe Biden. Now, sure as hell I ain't going to do it for him in 2024.
That's something very similar to you, which is like, listen, this was not easy for me. If you, wherever you live, swing state, not swing state, etc., you do whatever you analyze is the right thing to do. And the reason that I voted for him primarily at that time, even though I thought he had an atrocious record in the Senate, even though, complicit in the Iraq War, complicit in bad trade deals, complicit, like terrible.
Okay. Okay. If Dr. Cornel West ain't on the ballot, I'll go vote for Trump. That's how I'll look at it. He's the lesser of two evils.
Things on crime, all that stuff, right? The primary reason I voted for him was because of the National Labor Relations Board. And because labor politics and building out union power in this country, to me, is one of the most important goals and something that I think we all share and leftists generally believe. Now, in retrospect, not only do I feel good about that vote, he's actually surprised me. Now, I've got all kinds of issues, right? On the National Labor Relations Board, though, specifically, they just issued a ruling which could be a complete game changer for unions. And just to explain to people a little bit, basically, in the past, bosses could union bust with impunity, no accountability. Now, the process going forward is completely changed. If bosses are caught union busting, then that's it. There's no more election. It's canceled. They have to.
Yeah, no, man, I'm covering this debate between these lefties. It's pretty much Brianna Joy Gray versus Krystal Ball, and as you can see, her Simp Kyle. Actually, his name is Kyle Kalinske. I just call him by his proper title. Her Krystal Ball Simp Kyle. But yeah, let's continue.
To recognize the union and start bargaining with them. That's the biggest shift in labor relations we've had in our lifetime. So that's why at this point, I'm not only, it's likely to, I'm a Marianne supporter as well, but we can all see the most likely outcome is it's going to be Trump versus Biden. Not only would I say that protecting the Biden National Labor Relations Board isn't important enough for me to vote for Joe Biden, but it is important enough that I would actively encourage, I'm not going to shame them for whatever they decide to do, but I would actively encourage people who are in a swing state to vote for Joe Biden, if for no other reason than to protect that board.
So I think that's a perfectly defensible position. And I had this conversation on my podcast in the last episode, and there were people who would characterize that position as, you've heard the thing, you've been on the internet.
I still ain't voting for Joe Biden. Get over it.
Being too credulous about Biden or, being too comfortable in one's own position in life and not needing enough change and being happy with the status quo. People will say things like that. I think actually that if your priority, if you believe the path to meaningful change is going to primarily come through a kind of, I don't say this dismissively, but a kind of labor incrementalism, meaning there are meaningful labor gains that happen, but are not the type of which would radically transform the system the way that some people want to happen in a shorter term. And the way that some people might argue Bernie Sanders represents.
Oh yeah, Brianna Joy Gray's been around for a while. She also hosts Rising on the Hill. Hill. She's been around for a while. She was I forget her title, but she helped run. She actually helped run Bernie's campaign back in 2020. And shout out to her. She actually had all reason to say back in 2020, I'm not voting for Joe Biden. And but what did Bernie do? He wouldn't try to convince everybody to vote for Joe Biden. And but yeah, Brianna's been around for a while. Been around for a while now. I don't always agree with her, but
Invented.
She holds her own here.
His movement as the goal of being, then that's a defensible position. But I have to hold space for the reality that there are people for whom, even as significant as those labor gains are, it's simply insufficient. And what they see when they look at the trajectory of the last 50, 60 years of Democratic Party politics, when they read Listen Liberal and see the longer game the Democratic Party making a concerted choice to back away from labor in a way that has gone on for decades and isn't necessarily turning around as a consequence of Joe Biden having some good NLRB appointments. And
so let me actually,
and then I want to jump into it.
So number one, I don't think that in like massively increasing union density, I actually don't see that as incremental change. I mean, if you look at the chart of the decline in the middle class and the decline of union density, you'd be hard pressed to find a more significant factor.
But I made these arguments as well.
But the other piece is, I feel like those same people who are right about the Democratic Party, they were right about the analysis and Listen Liberal, right about the fact that you had this free trade bipartisan consensus, and in large part a union busting bipartisan consensus, also don't acknowledge that there actually has been a notable shift in the Biden administration. Now, my big issue with the Biden administration, I mean, there's a million of them, right? On foreign policy, I've got problems. But my biggest issue economically with the Biden administration is the way they've allowed the pandemic relief, the short-term pandemic relief programs to fall away and leave a lot of ordinary Americans in a more precarious financial position now than they were at the beginning of the administration.
Now, what she's talking about is true.
And that's not nothing. But when I look at the long term, when I look at the fact that, listen, with the Inflation Reduction Act, with the CHIPS Act, with infrastructure investment, you're talking.
Now, to be fair, the CHIPS Act was very important because the CHIPS Act help us. The CHIP actually helps us compete better with China. So I do agree with Biden on that.
Talking about industrial policy in a way that would have been completely unheard of in the Clinton-Obama era. When you look at not just the NLRB, which I said is like the core for me, but also his antitrust appointments and the fact they're really trying to reverse decades of neoliberal attack on any sort of trust busting, I feel like none of those improvements that have made Biden on that front way better than Obama, way better than Clinton, I just feel like there's no willingness to acknowledge any of that whatsoever.
I don't think the issue is acknowledging it. It's how much it matters to you, how weighty that is to you, and how much you see those kind of common meaningful improvements as really core to the nature of the project that you're on. And I think that what some people are frustrated by is that this went from feeling like, in both left media and left politics, a bigger revolutionary project that was going to the core of our capitalist system and wanting to radically change the way that human lives are valued, what we consider to be the nature of our social safety net, what we believe to be the nature of what we consider to be human rights. And they wanted to join a movement that validated what many of us felt intrinsically, emotionally for most of our lives, that something in the milk very much wasn't clean. And Bernie came along and articulated that it was legitimate for us to be asking for something more. And so at this point, it does feel as though there has been a kind of a bait and switch. It's not that what you're describing isn't true or legitimate. And I said this on my podcast. If your priorities are what you have kind of articulated your priorities as being, I think it's a perfectly legitimate argument. But I have to hold space for the fact that for many people, it simply is inadequate.
Wait, can I respond?
Yeah,
let me jump in here. So my issue is that many people on the left are, I would say, dishonestly refusing to acknowledge any good things that were done. We could all on the left list, like, here's the 57 things we hate that Biden did. But when something good happens, I'm the only one talking about it, and then I get
blah, blah, blah.
accused of being a DNC shill.
Like I said, he's Krystal Ball's simp. Actually, it's her husband, but I call him by his proper title. That's her simp.
Now, I'm not blind. I think in order to be intellectually honest, you have to look at, here's the good things that happen, here's the bad thing that happened. I'm going to give them all to you, and then you could judge how much you value each and which one you weigh more and how that factors into your like voting analysis. But I was like the poster boy back in the day, or people viewed me this way, as like, he's the purity tester. He's like the main purity tester guy. And
now you're a simp for Krystal Ball, and you're a vote blue no matter who now. And
I didn't vote for Biden in 2020 because I didn't think he would pass my purity test. Now, at the time, people could go back and watch the video. My purity test was super fucking lenient. It was like, if I'm convinced you're going to do like 2 or 3 of the things that I value highly, then I would vote for you, because I know it's basically down to just the Democrat and the Republican, no matter how much we want to wish the Green Party or Libertarians want to wish the Libertarian Party into existence. And so when I look at the record, again, I can list all the bad things, but she just mentioned the NLRB raising overtime pay, or you mentioned the thing where, you know, they automatically recognize the union if the bosses try to bust it up. There's also the overtime pay rule, where now it's not $33,000, it's about $55,000 a year, where now you get overtime pay. That's a huge, huge change. Student loan debt reduction, and even Biden even coming back after the Supreme Court tried to slap it down, and he said, no, I'm going to try to do it through the Higher Education Act now. There's little things we could go after. Oh, the interest rate. Yes, that's bad. I agree with you on that. But we got to recognize that that is, all things considered, a step in the right direction. Pulling out of Afghanistan, he actually had the balls to do it, even when the media was shitting on him relentlessly. And I didn't see anybody on the left coming into his defense at that point.
I saw a lot of people.
I was like the only fucking one. It was like me and Matt Iglesias.
I definitely defended it.
Okay, well then it's like 3 people. I didn't, and all these. Oh, I'm so anti-war, anti-war. He pulls out of Afghanistan, and it gets messy, because that's what happens when you pull out of wars. And all of a sudden, oh my God, you know, it's the
I thought that was actually a good moment for the left. I saw a lot of consensus. Good on you, because we almost resented and kind of were enjoying the extent to which he was getting, you know, dogpiled by the mainstream media, and we were the only ones defending him. So I would quibble with that a little bit.
I didn't see much defending him. I really didn't.
Kyle, what people are responding to, if I can offer this, is not the idea that you are accurately describing advancements, good things that Joe Biden is doing. I think you could also say Obama did some good things.
No, Biden is way better than Obama. Not even close.
That's not the point I'm making. It's not that one is better than the other. You could also sit here and say Obama did good things. Now, the way you bristled at me saying that, I could say, oh, why won't you just acknowledge that Obama did good things? The same way that you're saying that leftists won't acknowledge, they bristle when you acknowledge that Biden did good things. And it's because we have different standards and we're making different kinds of comparisons.
But that's not my issue, because they're not even acknowledging the good things, is my point. I have a list of 47 things here, and I've heard nobody talk about any of them.
But let me get to the core of this point. The reason that people are frustrated with that kind of analysis is because it's been used for so long by liberals to justify why people shouldn't be asking for more. I'm not.
Yep. She's not wrong about that. It's been used. The Democrats have used that argument for years to why we should just fall in line. What did Tiffany Cross say? We should just fall in line and vote Democrat, vote blue, no matter who. She's not wrong about that.
I'm not saying that that's what you're doing, but if you bring up something like student debt, when the consensus of all the student debt experts that I've talked to on my podcast, people from the Debt Collective, the Ashley Taylors of the world, the legal experts I brought on, is that there was a path toward doing this, to canceling all student debt that would not have been stymied by the Supreme Court. The same authority that Donald Trump used to enact the student debt moratorium, which has been ongoing until beginning of this month for the last 3 years, was the same authority that he could have canceled all student debt with a stroke of a pen. He chose not to do that because he decided to means test the program. He circulated those documents. I got one in my inbox last August, I believe it was, to see if you qualify for student debt. It was a very easy form. But when he did that, that started the clock for people to be able to challenge it in court, which what 6 states did, 2 of them were successful, and now here we are today. Not only did he decline to do the unstoppable mechanism to actually cancel all student debt, he additionally chose to use a legal authority, which when many legal experts said was the most vulnerable one. So you're now saying,
no.
He could have used the Higher Education Act.
He did. He did.
He could have done that in the first instance,
but he didn't. And now we tried it again through the Higher Education Act. The idea that it's a conspiracy, he doesn't want to actually cancel it. No, he appealed the case like 4 or 5 times, and then at the end of it, when the Supreme Court said no, you can't do that, he said fuck you, I can, and he did the Higher Education Act. That's exactly what we wanted him to do. Then he does it, and people go, oh, that's not good enough. And it's like that's ridiculous.
There, Kyle. What we wanted him to do was first and foremost just cancel the student debt.
I expected him to do nothing on student debt. This is the point I'm trying to get across to you, is that I expected nothing from Biden, and he did way more than I expected. Let's be honest about it.
It's not about your expectations. We have different expectations.
Of course I'm going to talk about it through my expectations. I'm me.
But I want to pivot this conversation a little bit, because what we really have is a tactical disagreement. We could quibble about student loan debt. We could quibble about all kinds of aspects of the Biden administration. All of us would like him to do more. There's no doubt about that. But hold on a second. Our political aims are ultimately very similar. But I do think the student loan debt example is instructive, because it shows what has been effective in terms of securing real gains versus what has been ineffective. Jill Stein running in 2016, I don't think she was a spoiler, but the Democratic Party thinks she was a spoiler. They put that out to the public. So in the theory of change.
Yeah, they also think, not Ross Perot, who was the guy that ran third party in the 2000, what was his name? I'm drawing a blank. They might say it.
Where a third party would force all of this revolutionary change on the Democratic Party, that should have worked. But instead, it served to allow the Democratic Party to basically demonize and dismiss third party efforts, and then they prop up Joe Biden. So that definitely didn't work. However, the fact that Joe Biden had to be on a primary debate stage, versus Bernie and Marianne and a whole lot of Elizabeth Warren, a whole lot of other people who were pushing him on student loan debt cancellation, forced him into a position of doing something when he 100% would have done nothing otherwise. And we can see that now because, the fact that they've basically like blocked any sort of real democratic process within the Democratic primary has made it possible for him to literally promise nothing for this next term. Thus,
yep, that's true. Democrats don't want to have any primary debates whatsoever. Now, RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and Marianne Williamson is running, but the Democrats don't want to have any primary debates. They just want to inaugurate Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Far. So you can see how the third party effort was not successful in bringing about whatever revolutionary change people want to see. And the process that Bernie engaged in and that Marianne Williamson is engaging in now was far more effective in actually delivering results. And that's what I'm focused on.
So first of all, you, I think, are both fundamentally dramatically overestimating and overstating and giving way too much credit in the second that you can make your labor point, the student debt point. Absolutely not. Joe Biden promised and coerced people to the polls by saying he was going to cancel at least $10,000 of everybody's student loan debt.
Yes, he did.
And moreover, cancel all student loan debt for graduates of HBCUs. And he went down to Georgia, a state that he not only needed to win for the presidency, but needed to win for the Senate. And where there are 3 of the major HBCUs in the United States of America, made that promise, and people knocked doors and turned people out to the polls on the basis of that promise, which he immediately stopped talking about the second he got elected and reneged upon. He also knew the authority that he had to cancel all student debt. And I know because all of these student debt advocates have been talking about how they were directly liaising with this office and communicating these points, and they chose to ignore them and do a plan that he knew could be obstructed. You can say it's not a conspiracy theory, that's conspiratorial thinking, but it's either a conspiracy or he's an idiot. Those are the options. And I'm not especially comfortable in validating either of those things. Now, you were saying that you were looking through the prism of your own perspective.
No, I was saying I expected nothing from him, like we all expected nothing from him.
Absolutely not. The people that he promised.
I expected nothing from him. I expected nothing of Joe Biden. He was the guy who brought us NAFTA. He's the guy who brought us the Iraq War. He's the guy who wrote the Patriot Act, who wrote the Crime Bill. I expected nothing of him.
When a presidential candidate makes a promise to
and that's why I didn't vote for him. I expected nothing of him.
People and lies to them in order to get them to go to the polls. I believe it's my job as a member of independent media to make it clear so that people don't fall for those kinds of mistakes going forward. People, if Biden wants to run as I'm a milquetoast incrementalist who's just better than Trump, he can feel free to do that all day and night, and then he would have lived up to the expectations that he set for himself in the context of the primary campaign.
He did run as a milquetoast.
He promised to cancel all student debt for every graduate of an HBCU and $10,000 to $20,000 of student debt for people who earn less than $125,000 a year. Now, that might not matter to you, and I defend you guys against claims that, you don't care about this stuff because, you're out of touch and it doesn't affect you in material. I think that some of those claims get really silly and overly personalized. But Biden made a choice to tell 44 million Americans who have student debt that he was not only going to not fulfill his promise to them, but that in the middle of the debt ceiling argument of a couple of months ago, the one thing that he was going to bargain away to get the debt ceiling passed was ending the student loan moratorium. So now it's not me. I'm not the one in control of whoever votes. He has to make the case to those 44 million Americans who's he's starting their student debt up. That's right. Months before.
Yep. Y'all think the economy's bad now? Wait till after this month. Oh boy.
Is it stronger or weaker than what you expected? Because it's way stronger than what I expected.
Way weaker than what I expected.
But I expected nothing from him on student debt. Nothing.
The real question, though, is we all want all of the debt to be canceled.
Duh. Yeah, of course.
What is the most likely path to get us there?
And not Joe Biden, obviously.
Hold on. But I don't see how Cornel West getting 5% of the vote and unintentionally helping to reelect Trump. That doesn't get us there at all.
Let's get into that. Let's get into that.
Oh no. Trump might get reelected again. Excuse me. Be afraid. Be very afraid.
Whereas if you have a primary contender actually able face-to-face to pressure him, we have seen the way that can potentially work.
Those are not mutually exclusive. So why is that an argument against Cornel West?
It doesn't have to be exclusive, but do you think that the project of defeating Trump is worthwhile at all? Because I would turn back on you. You asked the question, like, where's the bottom of the
Nope, I'll probably vote for him again.
Lesser evil question? Like, where does that end? I would
turn unfortunately for y'all, now Trump is the lesser evil. Trump didn't try to start World War III like Biden's trying to do right now.
Turn back on you and say, where does it become not just a lesser evil, but like, actually, this person is significantly better? And I would say that Biden, for my disappointments with him, for all of the things that I talk about plenty, including disappointments on student loan debt, including on the pandemic relief that I talk about, including on the railways, all these things, right? Ukraine. At what point, though, do you acknowledge that this person is a lot better than Donald Trump? And so when you're in this binary choice where let's not pretend like Cornel West is going to be president of the United States, it is worth making the choice in that situation to reelect Joe Biden and get the NLRB and get the antitrust stuff and get what is at hand to be gotten in this moment and live to fight another day.
So for one, Krystal, somebody might say, and people did make this exact argument against Bernie Sanders. Fine, he's on the stage, but I'm not going to vote for him. I'm not going to weaken the person who's ultimately obviously going to be the president of the United States. Why not vote for Biden in the primaries? Why? And you're wrinkling your brow because it's a ridiculous argument. I completely agree. I don't see the argument for Marianne and against Cornel West. They have nothing to do with each other. You can vote for Marianne in a primary. You can be happy that she's on the debate stage, which obviously they aren't allowing, which is material to this argument I've got.
Yep. Democrats don't want to have a primary debate. It is what it is.
To say. Some people you're saying, what is the Green Party going to do? The Democratic Party has demonstrated that it won't host a free and fair and open primary.
Wait, I get that.
Can't argue with that. Democrats don't want to have an open primary. They're scared Biden will lose that.
But how does Cornel West getting 5% of the vote and helping unintentionally to reelect Trump, how does that move us towards our goals?
So two things. One, you said this in the now viral clip, that just framing Cornel West as the spoiler, looking at those polls. In those polls that you referenced, Biden is losing in both of them, with or without Cornel West in the race. Now,
well, Cornel West makes...
Yeah, Biden is losing to all the GOP candidates except Ron DeSantis, ironically.
Makes it worse.
We're going to make incremental
I just want to clarify one thing. I'm not blaming people or saying like it's their fault for Trump getting reelected or whatever. But I am saying we would like it if the way the Democratic Party responded to Cornel West would be to cancel all the student loan. But we know that's not reality.
So
we know that what ought to happen and the reality of what will happen are two very different things.
Let's get to the second point.
Yeah.
You framed the 2016 votes for Jill Stein and the reaction of the Democratic Party subsequently as evidence that a concerted movement effort to withhold one's votes has been proven ineffective. It is obviously the case, Krystal, that there was not a concerted effort in 2016 or any kind of structural movement to withhold one's vote for Hillary Clinton in favor of Jill Stein. It was just a bunch of us angry Bernie bros, a very small number, by the way, because we all know sitting here that more Bernie Sanders voters in 2016 bent the knee and voted for Hillary Clinton than Hillary Clinton voters in 2008 bent the knee.
By the way, just to add to her point, they ran the numbers, and even if everybody didn't vote for, even if you took away the votes that Jill Stein got, and the votes that the Libertarian Gary Johnson got, Hillary Clinton still lost the election via the Electoral College. So that argument is not the argument that Jill Stein caused Hillary Clinton the election is just utter bullshit.
And voted for Barack Obama. We all know these statistics. We've been saying them back at neoliberals for the last 5, 6, whatever years. That being said, there was no argument to control the media narrative and present an opportunity for actual leverage and change. So there wasn't like a group, there was no spokesperson, there was no politician, there was no left media that was saying, here, I have a organized movement, an organized group of people who are willing to actually change their mind and vote for the Democratic nominee in exchange for various concessions. That didn't exist. And I'm, by the way, not advocating for it. I know that some of my friends like Nathan Robinson have said that Cornel West should do exactly that, say that he'd be willing to drop out in exchange for various concessions. I think that's better than nothing. I think that's more than, frankly, I love Marianne and I hope she's successful, but that's more than Marianne is likely to get out of this. However, that is not even my plan, that's my perspective.
Yeah.
What I am saying, though, is that knowing that the Democratic Party is fundamentally not willing to be fair. They're willing to rig the election. They're willing to change the order of the states. They are willing to completely block Marianne out of the media. It feels rich to say that running within the Democratic Party is manifestly...
Yep. She's not wrong about that. The Democrat Party is on some bullshit. They, I was usually the first state to go in the elections, and they switched all around. So South Carolina, a state that they're never going to win in Electoral College, but you know that's where the Coon Jim Kleinberg's at. They made South Carolina first instead of Iowa and New Hampshire.
Demonstrably more effective in actually changing the outcomes
of the structural barriers
than Cornel West, who at very least, you keep being very dismissive, Kyle, about this 5% matching fund.
Well, I've said like 2 words in the past 10 minutes, okay? So I'm not being dismissive about anything. I haven't gotten a fucking word in.
Okay, what?
Yeah, the Simp didn't get a word in.
What is it that you're chomping at the bit?
It's the structural barriers against running as a third party, as rigged as it is by the DNC against the outsider Democrats, which it definitely is. It's even more rigged against third parties, which is why they always get like 3% of the vote.
Which is literally why
Bernie got 43% of the vote.
Which is literally why people feel it is a structural advantage to get someone like Cornel West to 5% of the votes so they can get federal matching funds. To me, as a voter,
40% as a Democrat.
For me, as a voter in New York, I'm not interested in shoring up the Democratic Party.
No, that's him getting his ideas out of shoring up Cornel West.
Neither am I.
I am not a Democrat.
I understand that. That's very clear.
Neither am I.
But I'm saying that would shore up Cornel West.
And the people who also don't want to vote for Joe Biden under any circumstances are not Democrats. And
Yep, that's where I'm at.
Fundamentally, you can make your argument. I think it's a perfectly legitimate argument to make to Democrats. I think that Democrats might think that Joe Biden is a manifestly better Democrat than other Democrats.
It's not about whether you're Democrat or Republican. It's about what are your political goals. And I think that
100%.
we share a lot of the same political
goals. There's a big one that we don't share.
But hold on. So I still don't understand. Just lay out for me. Like what in the ideal scenario happens and how does that constitute any sort of revolutionary change or help to further the goals that we largely share?
Yeah. I think for one, getting federal matching funds for third-party candidates, and I believe third parties are going to be a much better vehicle to actual meaningful change in this country than the Democratic Party, is infinitely more significant a goal.
But third parties haven't gotten a single electoral vote in 50
years. Round and round.
No, but it's true.
Yeah, that's true. But
because I mean, look at Ross Perot had all the money in the world. It didn't matter.
He didn't get one electoral vote. Do you agree that ranked choice voting needs to come first? That's the important question. Do you agree that if we get ranked choice voting, then yes, overnight third parties become more viable. But until we get them, they're not viable.
I think that Cornel West running in a general election where he has been doing this. He's been talking about ranked choice voting in interviews, but continuing to talk about how the onus is on the Democratic Party to prevent the spoiler effect. He is in a position now running in a general election every time he goes on TV to say, if you're upset at me at being a spoiler, you need to look at the Democratic Party who across the country for the last decades has been purposefully undermining any ballot measures that effectively put into effect ranked choice.
Because they know they would lose. But anyway.
Voting in Maine, in North Carolina, the way they attacked Matthew Hoh, I am not the enemy, they are. And that's the burden shifting, the narrative burden shifting I think the left should be engaged in right now. To the extent that you think that Cornel West can ruin Biden's chances, isn't it Biden's responsibility to find those votes, not among disaffected third partiers who don't owe him anything anyway, but the tens of thousands of millions of disaffected Democrats who aren't going to vote for him? We've all talked about this together. In Wisconsin, in 2016, there were 88,000 registered Black voters who voted in 2012 who declined to vote in 2016. That's like 2 or 3 times the margin by which Hillary Clinton lost in that state alone. And yet we're sitting here talking about whether or not Cornel West is going to pull some third-party voters away from the Democratic Party.
It's the difference between what I would love to happen and the reality that we have experienced now. I mean, we tried it before in 2016. It did not help.
What did we try in 2016?
The third-party effort. Jill Stein was not a spoiler. It is not those voters' fault who voted for, like you guys that voted for Jill Stein.
But she got blamed anyway.
But she got blamed.
And then the left was further marginalized as a result of it.
So I don't see the connection. If I did, I would love to vote for Cornel West. It would feel way better to vote for Cornel West. I share his politics almost 100%. But I don't see the connection between voting for Cornel West and achieving any of the aims. And I see a much more direct connection between protecting the Biden National Labor Relations Board and allowing this little budding, exciting, amazing, potentially transformational labor movement to actually grow. Whereas if Trump gets reelected, which is, listen.
What's good, Namer? I'm covering this Lefty debate. It's pretty much the left versus vote blue no matter who. On the screen is pretty much represents vote blue no matter who. It's Krystal Ball and her Simp Kyle.
And it's the fact, based on how the Democratic Party is going to respond to Cornel West's election bid, it is more likely that Donald Trump gets elected with Cornel West in the race. And that, to me, is a massive loss because we know what his record is. We know what his National Labor Relations Board was. We know who his labor secretaries were and how they were engaged in all this union busting. And so I see a much more direct connection between that moving the ball in our direction than, Cornel West getting 5% and either his candidacy not really mattering at all, or being used once again to, smear the left and marginalize the left and say these are just the people that are interested in getting Trump elected.
So to that second point, I'm just going to be honest. Not only do I not care about arguments that the left is going to be smeared, I think it's silly because no matter what we do, the left is going to get smeared. Bernie won.
Pretty much. She's not wrong about that. Pretty much.
Nevada, and it was, oh my God, we're going to decapitate people in Central Park. It is, I think, deeply unrealistic to expect that there's ever going to be a left movement that genuinely challenges power in this country that's not going to be smeared. And if you are choosing your political strategy on the basis of what's going to get you a pat on the head from MSNBC, I know that's not but that is
listen, that's fine. And I agree with you. Left is going to be smeared. But the question is, what is actually going to move the ball forward?
I'm confused by why you asking that.
Because I don't see.
Because policy is all that matters.
Because I don't see how Cornel West getting 5% and helping to reelect Trump ends up with things going in a better direction.
Like that, Krystal? He gets 5%, and then the Green Party, a third-party effort, gets stronger and more well-funded and more able to compete in future elections.
Until we have ranked choice voting, there is no even 1% viability for them. Can you admit that? Can you acknowledge that it's until we get ranked choice voting, no third party has any chance in hell? You agree with that, right?
Who do you think has been doing most of the ranked choice? Who do you think?
Can I answer? It's a simple question.
I'm going to answer it in my own time, in my own words, Kyle, respectfully.
It's a simple one. The ranked choice voting thing, if we get ranked choice voting.
I go around, I do a lot of podcasts. and I don't know what's going on right now. It might be the phase of the moon. We had the double moon last month, but I'm getting a little frustrated with feeling shouted down and disrespected in every single space that I go into. I gotta say, I promise I'm gonna answer your question, Kyle. Sit tight. I got it coming for you.
I'll sit tight.
Who do you think has been doing the bulk and the best funded ranked choice voting advocacy in terms of getting it on ballots and getting it passed in the United States of America?
Third-party voters.
The Libertarian Party.
Yeah.
Because unlike the Green Party, I'm no fan of the Libertarian Party, but for obvious reasons, they were enormously better funded than the Green Party. And they, as a consequence, have been able to make much greater gains and actually getting ranked choice voting passed around the country. What I'm saying is that there's a tangible material benefit to getting more money for a Green Party, whatever third party happens to be, but right now all we have is the Green Party for obvious reasons. Getting them more money to do the work across the country to advance third parties, ranked choice voting rather, is exactly the goal that you're articulating. So yes, I do see a direct connection between your goal, your stated goal of getting ranked choice voting and voting for the Green Party. You know who's not going to fight for ranked choice voting? The Democratic Party.
Here's my point. There's not even a 1% chance or a 0.1% chance of Cornel West winning unless or until we get ranked choice voting. So I have to be honest, I feel like it's self-disenfranchisement to really put all your effort into third parties before we get ranked choice, putting the cart before the horse, in my opinion. That's my point. And on the issue of Democrats versus Republicans, we know either the Democrat or the Republican is going to win. And clearly we have a disagreement in terms of how good of a job Joe Biden is doing. Because like I said, I expected nothing of him, Brianna. I expected, this is the guy who brought us the Iraq War and the Patriot Act and NAFTA, and he's like the poster child of the conservative Democrat and the neoliberal. But then he gets in office and he does all these things which shock me. He massively reduced the drone war by over 90%. He, like I said, pulled out of Afghanistan. The Supreme Court overturned the EPA's ability to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. And the Democrats slipped into the IRA a provision that redefines carbon as a pollutant, which then allows the EPA to start protecting the environment again. If we didn't get that, and yes, that was brought to us by Democrats, we would be beyond fucked on the issue of climate change. We still are, but we'd be even more fucked if the EPA couldn't do basic EPA stuff. We have project labor agreements for hundreds of thousands of construction workers. That came to us from Biden. $15 minimum wage for federal contractors and employees. That's from Biden. Gun reform with red flag laws and closing the boyfriend loophole. Those are definitely good things. Ketanji Brown Jackson on the court. A George Floyd executive order to create a registry of abusive cops. We have the PACT Act, which is healthcare for veterans exposed to toxic burn pits, which every single Republican voted against. He added 800,000 manufacturing jobs. I didn't expect any of these things. So when I talk about Biden the way I do, is because none of these things were on the menu and we got them. So now when I look at the fact it's either going to be Trump or Biden, a standard generic Republican or standard generic Democrat, the way I feel now versus the way I felt in the past is like, oh, this is definitely way better. If you asked me in 2019 or 2020, I'd be like, I don't know, man, flip a coin. 52% maybe a Democrat's a little bit better than a Republican. Now I'm looking at it like, it's not even close. One blows the other out of the water. And all I care about is the policy. And when we have all these policies, I mean, we have a 15% corporate minimum tax rate now. That is not something we had previously. You have corporations paying nothing in taxes, or they'd even get a negative tax rate, which is a subsidy effectively from the taxpayers. These things are not nothing. We have a 1% tax on stock buybacks. They're cracking down on wealthy tax cheats. Like, all these things are very good. They're objectively good. So do you agree that Biden is better than what we expected on the left?
Maybe you've already said that your expectations are on the ground, and it seems like he's surpassed your expectations. He has not surpassed mine. I don't know what you want me to say.
But he's not better than what you thought.
No,
That's
he's not
question.
better than what I thought.
Really?
No.
You expected to be better than I did, for sure.
I expected him to. Well, I didn't really expect him to fulfill his campaign promises, but I'm not going to pat him on the back when he so flagrantly lied about them. No.
But let me ask you a related but different question. I mean, how do you assess the difference between a Trump and a Biden? Acknowledging that, I mean, I think you would acknowledge it's not, Cornel West is not going to be president.
I'm going to be honest with you. If it's about convincing me how Brianna Joy Gray is going to vote, Brianna Joy Gray lives in D.C., is constructively disenfranchised, and Brianna Joy Gray also is sympathetic to accelerationist arguments. So I am not afraid of Trump, and I am not.
Well, I need to play that again.
I will also is sympathetic to accelerationist arguments. So I am not afraid of Trump.
I need to play that again for the vote boo, no matter who that I argue with, because that's my sentiment exactly.
And I am not going to. I will never. So how Brianna Joy Gray is going to vote? Brianna Joy Gray lives in D.C., is constructively disenfranchised, and Brianna Joy Gray also is sympathetic to accelerationist arguments. So I am not afraid of Trump, and I am not going to. I will never, for the rest of my life. I don't care if I live in Pennsylvania. I don't care if I live in Georgia. Vote out of fear. That's not who I am. That's not who I was raised. That's just me. And I recognize that I am radical. I recognize I'm not telling anybody to be like me, but that's who I am.
So, but just to get back to the question, I mean, do you acknowledge that Biden is better than Trump? I genuinely want to know, like, how do you assess?
That's my problem. Biden is not better than Trump. Trump is actually the lesser of two evils. Biden is trying to start World War III on two fronts. Trump never did that crap. Hell, Trump tried to talk to North Korea. Biden ruined all that shit. Now North Korea's started their nuclear program again, and now South Korea and Japan are scared shitless.
Yes, you see they're like roughly
I think
the
it depends
same.
on what metric they're using. There are people who will take everything that you just said and say, if Biden escalating in Ukraine the way he has been doing missiles going off deeper, closer to Russia that are Western in origin, and the doomsday clock ticking down on World War III the way it has been done, cancels out all of the meaningful gains that you just articulated so nicely.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, it does.
If it comes down to World War III versus that litany of achievements that you just articulated, there are people that, with the hindsight of living in the nuclear holocaust, would say, well, I guess that Trump actually was a better president.
Who's more likely to get us World War III, though? I definitely think it's Trump. I definitely think it's Trump more likely to get us World War III.
I don't want to know what people...
Like I said, that's Krystal Ball and her Simp Kyle.
People think.
You disagree?
I want to know what you think. Do you think that that's accurate? Because to me, I look at the record.
We don't know until history happens what history is going to do. I wouldn't have expected that under Biden we would have gotten in the middle of this war with Ukraine and Russia. I would not. That wasn't on my bingo card either.
Yeah, but we know that Trump was actually more hawkish towards Russia than
he built up on NATO's border.
Obama
he put troops on NATO's border.
We know what he did with Iran. We know he said he was going to get on Afghanistan. Biden actually did it. So we can evaluate these two claims. We shouldn't believe anything that Donald Trump says about Ukraine.
A toxic. This is literally just a vote blue no matter who conversation, a lesser two
evils conversation. No, it's a let's discuss the facts and how you weigh them conversation.
How about this? Biden can be 10 times better than Trump. Let's concede that for the sake of argument. I'm not voting for him. And millions of other people feel the same way because it has absolutely nothing to do with that. I don't know how else to express this to you guys. Kyle, it's not that there is a disinterest or a failure to recognize what are meaningful changes, but there is a realization that acknowledging gains when the possibility of what someone could be doing to help the population that elected them, when there is a huge gap there, it can be papered up by championing someone's accomplishments, and people are reluctant to give credit precisely because they think it will end the conversation about how much further people should be pushed. So it feels akin to saying Jeff Bezos was walking down the street and he gave a $5 to a homeless person.
It's not that. Oh my God.
Don't you want to pat him on the back? And it's like, well, yeah, on some level, I'm glad the homeless guy can give his sandwich. But your framing of the student debt issue
is accurate. Yes.
Is precisely what the problem is.
It's not a problem. Look, I am actually discussing the facts that I learned through reading 1,000 articles on the case. Now, if I bring up those facts and it triggers some idiots into hating me, so be it. They can hate me all they want. The facts still matter.
What are you talking about?
Okay, I didn't expect him to appeal the cases. He appealed the cases. I didn't expect him to do the Higher Education Act after this mess. Now, if I bring up those facts and it triggers some idiots into hating me, so be it. They can hate me all they want. The facts still matter.
What are you talking about?
Okay, I didn't expect him to appeal the cases. He appealed the cases. I didn't expect him to do the Higher Education Act after the Supreme Court slapped it down. He did the Higher Education Act. I didn't expect him to do any of it, and he did it. And this is something that, if I said early on,
oh my gosh, I didn't expect him to do this, so I'm going to vote for him and pretend he's not the lesser of two evils.
Biden's going to do nothing on student loan debt. Everybody on the left would have been like, you're right, he's going to do nothing. Now he does 5, 6 different things on it, and it's like people go, no, doesn't count. I'm not saying what he's doing is perfect. Obviously, the best thing to do is to wipe it all out through executive order, and he has the authority to do that. That'd be the best thing to do. He didn't do that, but can we at least acknowledge the facts of what went down? And I see this rugged insistence. Honestly, it's like Biden derangement syndrome among some people on the left, and it's like Democrat derangement syndrome among some people on the left. The fact that we can't all agree very quickly that, well, obviously Democrats are not 10 times better than Republicans. They're 100 times better than Republicans. And even if you are somebody who's a purist and you're on the left, you can acknowledge a
based on what facts?
you in the instances you get it while still pushing for more. I mean, a perfect example is what's happening in Minnesota right now. Minnesota has a 1-seat Democrat majority. We got universal free school meals, legal weed, carbon-free electricity by 2040, tax rebates for the working class up to $1,300 if you make under $150,000 a year, 12 weeks paid family leave, 12 weeks paid sick leave. They banned conversion therapy. They did red flag laws for guns. They did universal background checks for guns. They did automatic voter registration, public free college if you make under 80K, a ban on PFAs, which is the forever chemicals, $2.2 billion increase in K-12 school funding, sectoral bargaining for nursing home workers. These things are all not little wins. They are huge wins. And I still see this insistence like we're back in 2016 or something, where people are like, no, Democrats and Republicans are either equally bad or actually jujitsu move, Republicans are the lesser evil. And I think it's idiotic. It's doomerist. It's nihilist. It's people who are refusing to acknowledge reality, and they'd rather narrative hump all day talking about Democrats are so bad, Democrats are so bad, Democrats are so bad, but oh yeah, I'm a leftist.
Going back to the student debt point, it is kind of telling to me, Kyle, that you so quickly, you injected your own low subjective, personal, and low expectations into the argument to say, well, because Joe Biden did more than I subjectively believed was possible, I am going to, you're accusing me of minimizing the accomplishments. I think that you might be minimizing his failures. And
yep, pretty much.
The extent to which that he knowingly, it seems, lied about what he was willing to do, and in fact, dramatically underachieved his campaign promises. And for you, that might be a hop, skip, and a jump. Okay, but he did more than I expect. You're setting your expectations lower than the expectations that he set for the American public in the context of his campaign. And I completely
lowered expectations.
Respect and appreciate that doesn't bother you as much as it bothers me. I don't know if it's because I have experienced six-figure student debt. I don't know your life. I'm not trying to make any presumptions about it. I don't know if it's because I had a certain kind of life experiences or that other people who kind of share my view have these kind of life experiences. But for millions of us, 44 million, in fact, that kind of bait and switch is unforgivable when you recognize, as you have both recognized, that it was in his power to sign an executive order to deliver overwhelmingly for the people whose votes he needs right now. So the argument is not with me. The argument is with the millions of Americans who feel betrayed by Joe Biden and his campaign promises. If we have a contract agreement for you to fix the hole in my roof and I give you $100, and you come into my house and instead you restage my living room and it looks beautiful, that simply wasn't the agreement. And so I am fine. I'm happy to acknowledge the furniture placement is gorgeous. I love the floral arrangements, but that's not what we bargained for. And if your desire is to push the Democratic Party left, you have to. Chris Hedges says this all the time. It's a politics of fear. If you are more afraid of electing Trump than the Democratic Party is, you are never going to be able to exert any leverage on them at all.
Well, let me play that again for the knuckleheads who are
I
vote blue no matter who's in this space.
Chris Hedges says this all the time. It's a politics of fear. If you are more afraid of electing Trump than the Democratic Party is, you are never going to be able to exert any leverage on them at all.
Let me play that again for the knuckleheads.
Chris Hedges says this all the time. It's a politics of fear. If you are more afraid of electing Trump than the Democratic Party is, you are never going to be able to exert any leverage on them at all. And I understand that's a risky position. I understand Trump getting reelected is scary. I understand that there are meaningful ways in which he's hurt real people in real ways. I understand all of that. And we just have a difference of opinion about what the priorities are. You said in that viral clip, Krystal, if your priority is reelecting the Democratic Party, then X, Y, and Z. And I think that was good that you said that because you articulated what the priority is for you.
No, that is not the priority for me. The policy is the priority for me, Brie. And I think you know that. And I think it's disingenuous to say otherwise. But let me just say though, is it worth? I mean, I think you care a lot about the labor movement, right?
Sure.
So is it worth letting that baby be smothered in the crib in order to what? I mean, that's the piece that I don't understand. I understand all of your critique of Joe Biden. I think it's reasonable. Okay, I actually am not as strong as Kyle in terms of the intentions on the student loan debt. More of a Biden bro than she is,
for sure. And she gets accused of being a bigger one than me, but that's the side point.
I understand your critiques of Joe Biden very well. Many of them, if not all of them, I basically share. What I don't understand is just simply a tactical question of how focusing on a third-party effort gets us towards the goals that we share. That's the piece that, to me, recent history proves it has the complete opposite effect, whereas we do see actual progress that is possible made through the Democratic primary process. And I know you accept that, like you're not a Marianne hater. I'm not putting that on you whatsoever. Marianne. But I don't understand how risking the reelection of Trump and allowing a Trump union-busting NLRB to quash what is the most hopeful thing happening in American politics, which is the labor movement. I don't understand how that moves us forward. Like, that just doesn't compute for me.
Well, for one, I'd say, and I don't mean to at all minimize the value of this latest ruling, but I have been heartened by the energy and the gains made by the labor movement prior to that over the last few years.
Which were enabled by the Biden NLRB. I mean, there were keys. The workers get listen, they do the work. I'm not trying to take anything away from them. But there were key decisions that were made in the Starbucks organizing drive in particular, in the Amazon labor union drive as well, that enabled those workers to do their thing. That wouldn't happen under Trump.
It feels as though, one, the question has been asked and answered several times. You don't agree with my priority.
But I still don't understand it. And I'm may just be dense, but explain again.
I agree with Kyle that ranked choice voting is a priority.
Yeah.
I believe that getting the Green Party more powerful, getting them federal matching funds, enables them to join in the Libertarian Party, which has been the most successful advocate for ranked choice voting in the country, to continue to further those efforts. My vote for Joe Biden does nothing to advance what I think will be the ultimate path toward left victory in the United States, which is getting rid of the corporate duopoly. I don't see voting for Joe Biden as advancing that core effort at all.
So ranked choice voting is kind of like, I'm just trying to understand, is like the end all be all. That's the number one priority. And so you would actually support the Libertarian Party, the American Constitution Party, the Forward Party, whatever, if it advanced that goal. And that's a priority over everything else. I'm just trying to understand.
Would I personally support an effort by any of those parties to advance ranked choice voting? Yeah, of course.
No, but would you support those parties? Like, because ranked choice voting is so important.
Why would I when I could vote for the Green Party that actually shares my ideals as well?
Well, I'm just trying to understand where your priorities lie. Is it like you're basically a single issue voter and it's ranked choice voting?
Well, it's not a single issue. It's breaking the corporate duopoly. That's it. This is the fundamental issue. I think that for many people, they are very wary of validating what they see as a two-headed snake. And it's
pretty much.
This comes back to your concern, Kyle.
Two sides of the same racist ass coin.
Kyle, about people not willing to acknowledge these successes. I think that we all understand that there is a way that the two corporate parties play off of each other. Democrats get to keep lowering the bar because the Republicans are worse. They both play these culture war games back and forth with each other, where at the end of the day, we're told we had to vote for the Democrats because gay rights and trans culture each other. Democrats get to keep lowering the bar because the Republicans are worse. They both play these culture war games back and forth with each other. Get to keep lowering the bar. Understand that there is a way that the two corporate parties play off of each other. Democrats get to keep lowering the bar because the Republicans are worse. They both play these.
And if they keep playing that game, you're going to get somebody worse than Trump. Mark my words.
Culture war games back and forth with each other, where at the end of the day, we're told we had to go vote for the Democrats because gay rights and trans rights and black rights and immigrant rights and all of these rights are on the line. And I said this in 2020 as well. It's not that those arguments aren't true. The question is, how do we ever disentangle ourselves from that? Because it's always going to be the case that some worser thing is coming down the pike precisely because we've enabled that to be the case. And many people, I don't feel quite this way, but many people feel as though there is an energy suck that happens with even paying attention and voting in these general elections. I think that your points about what's happened on the state level in Minnesota, et cetera, are much stronger. I know that, for example, Sabby Sav is always making the case that, don't forgo electoral politics, focus more on what's happening on the local level. And I think that is a perfectly reasonable argument to make as well. But I do think that there is a failure to recognize.
Listen, if you want me to cover more stuff like this, hit the Cash App and support the show.
The extent to which there is a validation that takes place of the status quo, that people are trying to negotiate as they reckon with real gains that the Biden administration has effectuated.
Yeah, so let me respond to that. I don't want to validate the status quo as much as I want to acknowledge the positive things that exist and have happened recently, which I think is some evidence that in some ways, limited, but some ways, we are moving in a better direction. So let me share a point of agreement, because we've been arguing the whole time. It'd be nice to have a point of agreement real quick. If we wake up tomorrow and there's ranked choice voting everywhere, I would be the biggest green point of limited, but some ways, we are moving in a better direction.
Based on what facts? Gas is almost $4 a gallon. Grocery prices are through the roof. Inflation is raising the prices of everything. But yeah, we're in a better direction than we were under Trump. Yeah, that's some bullshit.
So let me share a point of agreement, because we've been arguing the whole time. It'd be nice to have a point of agreement real quick. If we wake up tomorrow and there's ranked choice voting everywhere, I would be the biggest Green Party simp on the planet. I would be insufferable. I would basically spend every day advocating for the.
You're a big enough simp right now, anyway.
Green Party. The reason I don't do that is because we don't have ranked choice voting. I do feel like the choice is effectively just down to a Democrat or Republican in the general election, whoever they may be. Now, having said that, I don't want to validate the status quo. I just want to let everybody know.
You're doing it now.
In some ways, we are moving in a good direction. You brought up the state parties there. There are 6 states now that did free school meals for kids. And in some of those states, that's even breakfast and lunch. And people are not going to be surprised to hear this. Those are Democratic states. And you have the Republican Study Committee, which is basically 3/4 of the House GOP. They're pushing to ban any and all states from doing free school meals for kids. They released this in their priority. So when I look at that, I feel like I try to hold the two thoughts in my mind at the same time. I want Cornel West to be president, but I also know that given how structurally deficient and biased the system is right now, it's not going to happen. So given that, yes, I would prefer. Let me ask you this, because I feel like this is a better way to put it. Forget about voting. Voting's irrelevant, right? Let's just say it's election night 2024. It is all of our worst nightmare, Biden versus Trump. Not voting, but that night when you know it's going to be Biden or Trump winning, are you sitting there like, yeah, of course I would prefer Biden win over Trump?
No, I'll vote for Trump. No, let me say it again in case you didn't hear me. For the Negroes in the back, I'd rather vote for Trump.
Honestly,
it's like 50-50.
I don't care.
Okay, all right, that's an answer.
It's not my party.
That's an answer.
That's
an answer.
Radical. People are going to be very upset with me. I don't care. I
think
care. That's
there will be people who agree with you. I don't think you.
I know.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, yeah. They're my audience.
Whatsoever. There's nothing wrong with what she's saying whatsoever.
And I've come to this position after talking with, I got to say, I loved Colin. I'm sad that they're shutting it down. But part of the reason I loved it is because I would talk to people who were calling me. I would hear their doors dinging in the background because they were doing food delivery, or they're EMTs, or they're like, and this gets characterized as a privileged position that you don't care who wins, Trump or Biden. My experience is the people who have been taking this position, this is just anecdotal, tend to be people are the lower end of the economic spectrum who do feel like their lives aren't meaningfully different under a Trump versus a Biden, and who would rather rock the boat and throw a monkey wrench in the machinery if there's even a fracture of a sliver of a chance that it has some outcome other than what we've been experiencing for their entire lives.
Pretty much. That's where I'm at.
Give a direct answer,
Yeah,
so I respect it.
The other thing I would say, that because you said you're basically an accelerationist, like you think things need to get better in order for them to get worse.
I feel,
worse in
given
order
my
for them to get
own
better.
class privilege, I am reluctant to personally put those wheels into motion, but I very much respect particularly people who, like I just was talking about, who do feel that way. I think that's a legitimate perspective. I feel like it's not my place to say, let's make the world burn, because I'm going to be okay in either way. But I am open to that perspective.
Colors your view and how you approach these things and why you wouldn't really care whether it's Biden or Trump.
Yeah. I mean, I remember the night of 2016. I wasn't, I don't know, how did you guys feel? I wasn't personally devastated.
So
I felt
that's a
in
great
some
question.
weird
Let me
way
answer.
vindicated.
That's a very.
This is what we had been telling them was going to happen the whole time.
Neither was I. I tried to warn people that Hillary Clinton can lose to Trump, and of course I got shot down.
So I agree with you completely about 2016, right? And I voted for Jill Stein in 2016. 2020, I didn't vote for Biden. I didn't vote for anybody.
And you're still a simp.
But he was sort of like, no, seriously, I think they're roughly equal. I think Biden's around the edges better, but I thought he was going to be as conservative a president as he was a senator. So I was like, okay, whatever. But on the night of 2020, I was actually like, oh, for the love of God, I hope Trump loses. And, it's because I see everything he did. I mean, look, I can run through all the bad things Biden did. That's my standard rant that I've been doing for a long time now. But when you look at Trump, I mean, I don't want to sidetrack the conversation here, but like the 91 felonies that he's charged with for defrauding the United States with fake electors and effectively trying to steal the election. Like, to me, I kind of agree with the people who are like, on that alone,
no one gives a shit.
I mean, this is fucking crazy. We've never been here before. We're talking about the peaceful.
And you're just making them more popular, especially with that mugshot.
Transfer of power is genuinely in question now in a way that never was before.
Let me say, in terms of my view on Trump, the reason why I'm not even a little bit sympathetic towards the accelerationist view is, first of all, I just think things get worse. Sometimes they just get worse. And I think there's a real possibility that, we go rather than a leftist utopia, we go in the direction of like a fascist police state. I think that's a real possibility on the table. And if things get worse, I think that's probably more likely than the outcome we would like to see. But specifically on Trump, in some ways, the worst part of the Trump era has been not that it has created a divisive politics, because I believe in a divisive politics. It's just about where the divides should be. And he has made politics all about just how do you feel about the person of Donald Trump. And I think that has been a significant barrier in terms of making any of the arguments that we want to make for a different world and better policies, et cetera. Because, yeah, you could say, oh, they'll just say Ron DeSantis or whoever is worse than Trump. But you got to acknowledge there is something a little special about the dude who's going to do a January 6th and have an insurrection, et cetera. He's a particularly potent villain that is weaponized very effectively. And so it creates a divisive politics that.
And Joe Biden is still losing to that sucker.
Is divided along all the wrong lines. So that's why I'm not sympathetic. And
Joe Biden is still losing to him. What's that say about Joe Biden?
Sympathetic to the view that maybe if we elect Trump, somehow that'll make things better in an a process that's 3 years down the road or 3 decades down the road that no one can really explain. I'm not sympathetic to that because I've seen the way that Trump has made our politics worse in real time in a way that has not been beneficial.
No, Democrats did that. Trump didn't start Russia. That was Democrats. Trump didn't start vote blue no matter who. That was Democrats. Trump doesn't shame his voter to vote for him. That's what Democrats do.
Well, for one, I would say, to the extent that we are inching closer to fascism as opposed to the socialist utopia, we got exactly here doing vote blue no matter who. So I don't
pretty much.
Any
Yep.
kind of.
Let me play that again for the knuckleheads that didn't hear.
Green. We are inching closer to.
I'm not sympathetic to that because I've seen the way that Trump has made.
We are inching closer
worse in real time in a way that has not been beneficial.
Well, for one, I would say, to the extent that we are inching closer to fascism as opposed to the socialist utopia.
Yep.
We got exactly here doing vote blue no matter who. Fascism as opposed to. Well, for one, I would say, to the extent that we are inching closer to fascism as opposed to the socialist utopia.
Yep.
We got exactly here doing vote blue no matter who. So I don't think that any kind of concerted Green Party campaign or effort
learned a lesson.
But that's not really
if we voted blue no matter who, Al Gore would have been president. We would have never had Bush, and Hillary would have beaten Trump. So vote blue no matter who would have been a whole bunch of standard milquetoast Democrats.
Now you're making the argument that it's third-party spoilers' fault that Al Gore wasn't elected in 2000.
No, I didn't say that. I'm saying you accused the vote blue no matter who argument. I'm saying if people had quote unquote voted blue no matter who, Democrats would have won every election. That's the point I'm making.
Well,
vote blue no matter who means everybody votes Democrat.
So for one, more registered Democrats in Florida voted for George Bush.
I know, I agree with
you. Did Al Gore.
Now, for the record, Al Gore still won that state straight if you look at the numbers, but that's neither here or there.
Al Gore failed to win his own state.
That's also true. That's what people don't want to talk about. Al Gore did some other shit that lost him that election.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree with you on that.
I'm struggling with the argument here. What is George? But then the Supreme
No, you just
Court
said we got where we are now because of vote blue no matter who. And the point I was
pretty much
making is, in a real quote unquote vote blue no matter who, there would have been no Republicans elected if everybody votes Democrat. That's the point I'm making.
Vote blue no matter who doesn't mean everyone votes Democrat. Vote blue no matter who means the Democratic Party uses coercion and guilt to get people to vote for it, instead of delivering on what polls demonstrate overwhelming majorities of American guilt. Vote blue no matter who doesn't mean everyone votes Democrat. Vote blue no matter who means the Democratic Party uses coercion and guilt to get people to vote for it, instead of delivering on what polls demonstrate overwhelming majorities of American guilt to get people to vote for it.
That's why I put out that graphic, shame blue no matter who.
Instead of delivering on what polls demonstrate overwhelming majorities of Americans want, which is left policies. That's what the pernicious nature of vote blue no matter who is, that it absolves the Democratic Party of having to look at polls that say 2/3 of Americans don't want Joe Biden to run because he's too old, that 88% of Democratic voters want Medicare for all, that 60% of Floridians, a state that went for Trump, wanted a $15 minimum wage. But Joe Biden, whose praises we've been singing a lot today, purposefully stripped on order of the parliamentarian from must-pass COVID legislation, so that one core promise that he made to Bernie, as Bernie dropped out after like 3 days of not being, endorsed after 3 days after dropping out, was immediately thrown under the bus.
But let me just to interject real quick, because I don't want you to get the misimpression that I'm not aware of the negative things around Joe Biden. He also said he was going to get back in the Iran agreement, did not get back in the Iran agreement. We're still terribly.
Let's go back for a minute.
To Saudi Arabia as a co.
That one core promise. Democratic voters want Medicare for all. That 62 delivering on what
Republicans elected if everybody votes Democrat. That's the point I'm making.
Vote blue no matter who doesn't mean everyone votes Democrat. Vote blue no matter who means the Democratic Party uses coercion and guilt to get people to vote for it, instead of.
Let's talk about that for a minute. Why do you think I made this ad like this? Why do you think I made these ads? Because you thought I made this. You thought I made this because this came from nowhere. I made these ads specifically because of vote blue no matter who. But let's continue.
Delivering on what polls demonstrate overwhelming majorities of Americans want, which is left policies. That's what the pernicious nature of vote blue no matter who is, that it absolves the Democratic Party of having to look at polls that say 2/3 of Americans don't want Joe Biden to run because he's too old, that 88% of Democratic voters want Medicare for all, that 60% of Floridians, a state that went for Trump, wanted a $15 minimum wage. But Joe Biden, whose praises we've been singing a lot today, purposefully stripped on order of the parliamentarian from must-pass COVID legislation, so that one core promise that he made to Bernie, as Bernie dropped out after like 3 days of not being, endorsed after 3 days after dropping out, was immediately thrown under the bus.
But let me just to interject real quick, because I don't want you to get the misimpression that I'm not aware of the negative things around Joe Biden. He also said he was going to get back in the Iran agreement, did not get back in the Iran agreement. We're still terribly cooked to Saudi Arabia as a country as they do a genocide.
And you're cut to Krystal, so your point being,
where he's still sanctioning Afghanistan. He's super conservative on the border, almost to the point of being as extreme as Trump. He did the Willow Project. He didn't give us a public option. He didn't give us $15 minimum wage. He didn't get the original Build Back Better through. He screwed the rail workers union, which is something you very potently covered. So I'm not here to pretend like Joe Biden only did good things. I'm trying to do, to the best of my ability, explain what I think are the facts on both sides of the equation. Here are the good things he did, here are the bad things he did, and then people could just make up their own mind as to how they want to proceed in a showdown between Trump or Biden, who they would prefer.
Do you think that Biden is better than Obama?
I'm open to that argument. Again, my fundamental, what purpose does that serve for me?
I think it's everything, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's the like, is the person going to do good things that move us in a better direction? Especially, I brought up labor unions a million times, but for me, that's really central, or are they not? And I guess my question for you is, because you were sort of like, all right, let's acknowledge, sure, let's say Biden's 10 times better than Trump. Like, how much better would he have to be before you're like, okay, it's not just lesser evil, it's not just vote blue no matter who, it's actually worth voting for this person?
He would have had to have done everything that he could have done.
Even Bernie wouldn't have done everything he could have done, in my opinion.
Even in comparison,
what kind of statement is that?
I just think.
Wait a minute. I'm not saying he could have.
I'm not taking a shot at you. I'm just saying I don't think politics. Even somebody like Bernie, who's principled, I don't think he even delivers on everything.
He has to fulfill miracles. I'm not saying he has to accomplish everything that he says he wants to do. I'm saying he has to have done everything he could have done.
You can do a lot as president. You can do a lot.
So this is the issue with Biden. Not that he didn't wave a wand and create Medicare for all, because we can all acknowledge that even if it were Bernie Sanders, that would have been an uphill battle. But what I choose to focus on my show, and what I really appreciate about reporting by people like David Sirota and The Lever, is that he exposes the gap between what these people have done and what was literally possible, either because of the nature of executive orders, whether it's walking us through the parliamentarian brouhaha on the $15 minimum wage, because so much of neoliberal democratic politics is obscuring that they really could have done things to make lives better for all of us behind the veneer of insidery Hill jargon, or the idea that the Republicans are the big baddies that couldn't allow us anything to pass. And I believe that my job is to cut through those narratives, to expose to the public that the Democratic Party is making choices. They're not
he could have done Medicare.
In the football.
I'll go even further than you. I agree. He could have done Medicare for all with the stroke of a pen. And it was David Dayen over at the American Prospect who laid this out, who said basically, look, under a national emergency, you have the authority under Obamacare to basically do single payer healthcare. And they did it, I think, in Libby, Montana, because there was some issue there with health. So he had the ability to do it. So I agree with you. He could have done that. He didn't do that. The only point I was trying to make is that even with somebody like Bernie, I think there would be a little bit of a gap between what he says when he's on the podium and if he were to actually be president. I think a guy like Bernie would deliver on way more of the stuff that he says, because I think he's more honest among government officials. But, certainly Biden, there's definitely going to be a gap there between what he says and what he would do. But to be fair, like I said before, I do think Biden kind of ran as he wasn't as conservative as like Mike Bloomberg in the 2020 race, but he was pretty conservative. He was running as a pretty conservative Democrat, in my opinion.
Yeah, he was, but he still said, we're going to get a $15 minimum wage. We're going to cancel.
I'm not arguing with you. I don't know. I'm not arguing with you, Bree.
Kyle, if you say that he ran as a conservative, what it sounds like you're doing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a furtherance of you saying the bar was on the ground. He fulfilled my expectation.
It was, yeah.
But what I'm telling
you, he surpassed my expectation.
But he fulfilled, surpassed, whatever. What I'm saying to you is that you have constructed a bar that's lower than Biden constructed.
All right. Y'all got the gist of that. Looks like nobody. I put the link in the chat, so I guess nobody wants to come up and talk about this. But I wanted to cover that because Brianna made a lot of points that turned me against the Democrat Party. A lot of what I agree with a lot of what Brianna said, that, and it's one of the reasons I do not support the Democrat Party. Do I feel certain candidates are okay? Yeah. But I don't support the Democrat Party as a whole. They've particularly this vote blue no matter who bullshit is going to lead this country into the dumpster fire, into the to go in the hell in the handbasket, and I don't support that. So that's pretty much what this live stream is for. Since nobody wants to come up, I'm going to go ahead and shut the stream down. This is AB Media 83, and I'm out. Peace. Yo, this is AB Media 83. Want to support the channel? Hit the Cash App. Also, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the video. Also, be sure to hit that bell notification so you can be notified the next time I upload a live stream or video. And always remember, keep it grinding, keep it pushing, keep it moving. This is AB Media 83, and I'm out. Peace.